Alright, here is the project we are going to be doing on this DVD. It is my Calla Lily plaque. This is a plaque that you can purchase from Patricia Rawlinson's website, and you can use it like this, up and down, or you could use it like this. I've actually painted the back side, and I'm going to put something different on the back, and I've just covered it with some press and seal so I wouldn't get any paint on it, because I don't know what I'm putting on it yet, but I'd already prepped it for something else. So I think this turned out great, and you can set it in an easel in any room in your house, or if you've got one of those easels that hang on the wall that you can put pictures in, it can go in that. It's a great gift. You could drill holes in it and put wire on it and hang it on your door, and put welcome here, whatever pleases you. So this was done with a little bit of modeling in the background, and then we stenciled and then painted our design. So let's get to it and get started. Alright, we're getting started on this piece. Before I do, I want to show you what I did to the back side, because I had painted on this side and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I didn't want paint to get on it, so I covered it with Glad press and seal, and then I laid it on a cutting mat and cut with a razor blade just right next to this entire surface. So this will protect this side from me having paint run over or laying it through paint. Now I've got one coat of graphite on this side, so I'm going to roll another quick coat on there. Stand up. Hopefully I won't be in the shot when I do this. And I'm not going to worry too much about complete coverage on this, because we're going to add some colors into the background here. I want to get it wet. And as I work on this, if it feels like it's not staying wet, I am just going to lightly mist it with a spraying bottle instead of using like an extender or something like that. I'm just going to use water, a misting bottle, and mist it. Now I want to add into the background some lavender and some blue harbor. I'm going to try using this same roller. Hopefully it won't mute these colors down too much. These are colors that are going to be within the Calla Lily itself and the Dragonfly. I think I'll put a little bit of desert turquoise out as well. I'm not sure if the blue harbor will fade down in there too much or not. So I'm just picking up the purple there on my roller. See, I still got the graphite on there. And now I'm just going to randomly place this on here. Just going to gently blend it. I don't want to over blend it, because I want to see that purple in there when it dries. It will dry down quite a bit. Now I'm going to pick up some blue harbor. I know it looks blotchy on here, but trust me, excuse me, when it dries, it will be pretty awesome. Alright, now I'm just going to do a slap back and forth and blend these colors. If you feel like you're losing your graphite color, then you can just go pick up some of that. Now when you mist it with water, if you feel like you're not getting the blending like you want, and you mist it with water, it's going to take the color down quite a bit too, so just be aware of that. Now I'm giving more pressure on the back of the roller here to kind of blend it so I don't add any more color into it. I think I might add just a touch of desert turquoise. It's pretty bright. I don't want it to be. That's definitely going to be more random. I just want kind of a mottled background. You could do this with a sea sponge if you want that kind of more textured look in your background. We're going to stencil over the background a little bit with, to make some, probably with graphite and maybe a touch of lamp black mixed in with it. Okay, I've got my pattern ready to go on here. What I did was I took my tracing paper and I traced the shape of this plaque, and then I just lined it back up, cut a couple holes in it and taped it down so it won't move for me, and then just slid some white tracing paper underneath it. So now I'm going to get my pattern transferred on, and I'm going to go ahead and get some base coats on my leaves and my flowers, and we're going to get going. Okay, a couple of things before I finish putting on the base coats. I wanted to give you a couple of quick tips, and then we're going to go over a step that I forgot to do here. This is a paint roller that I just bought at Lowe's. Comes these 3 pieces right here together. Seems like it's like maybe $4 or $5. I know it's less than $5. And I use this as my brush tray when I'm designing my pieces. So I put my brushes in like this, where the paint, when you're using the roller, is normally down here. That's where I put the end of my paintbrush, down here. And then it keeps my brushes all in one place, and I know exactly which brushes I'm using when I write up my pattern packet. And it's a good way to keep them from, getting mixed in with your brushes that don't need cleaning. What I used to do before I started doing that was I would just take a pencil box and keep the brushes as I use them in this pencil box. So either one of those are a couple of good tips on how to keep your brushes as you're using them, so you know which ones need to be cleaned and which ones you're using for what project. Okay, the step that I forgot to do on this piece was I was going to stencil on the background a little bit. And you can put any kind of stencil or no stencil at all. That's really up to you. I really like how the background turned out once it dried. So you could put some leaves where you can just see them in the background, or some other flowers, or I'm going to do butterflies because I love butterflies. So I've got my base coat of this piece, which is graphite, and I've got some Blue Harbor, and I want to mix some of that in with this blue because I want to tone this blue down. I want my blue to be just kind of subtle in the background. So I've got maybe 2 blue to 1 graphite, and I think that might be a nice color choice. A color mix there. If I think it's not bright enough, I'll add some Blue Harbor, and if I think it's too dark, I may, I can add one or the other to fix the color. Now I'm just going to use this it's a little dauber tool, an ink dauber that you use for scrapbooking, and you can use it dry, but I like to get mine, stick it in my water basin, and let the sponge get good and damp on there, and then I just press out the excess water on a paper towel. I like my sponges to be damp when I use them because I think it makes the paint come out of the sponge a little bit easier. Okay, the stencil that I wanted to use is this butterfly stencil. This is also a Patricia Rawlinson excuse me, stencil, and I'm going to try and go around my flowers the best I can. So let me I've put some tack it over and over on the back of this because I don't want any bleed throughs. So I'm just tapping into my paint here, coming over here because I don't want tons of paint on my ink pad here. So I'm going to lift that up and see. That's pretty good. I think I like that color. So I'm going to go and put some random butterflies, and you don't have to perfectly get every little detail of the butterfly. You can, you know, just make it a hit and miss kind of thing, and I want these to be in the background, so I'm going to, you know, be painting over them. We've got these little flowers on here. You could add those as well. Trying to decide which butterfly I want here. So I'm going to try and miss my flower so I don't have to try and cover up that color. And you could just use all of one particular butterfly. You don't have to use a variety like I'm using. Okay, see how that's just in the background? So I'm going to finish putting my butterfly stencil all where I want it on the background, and then get my 2 coats of everything on my flowers, my leaves, and my stems. And then we will get going with some detail. Alright, I've got all my base coats in. I've erased any extra graphite lines that I didn't paint over. One tip, if you paint over a graphite line, it's going to be set in your paint. So you'll want to get enough coats over it to cover it so that you don't see it. Then on the background here on my butterflies, now like I said, that is an optional thing if you want to do that or not, because you know, I added the colors in the background when I rolled it on, so that would have been perfectly fine. Or I could have just painted it plain graphite or lamp black. Either one of those would have been beautiful with some butterflies in it. But I just wanted those butterflies spread in the background. I did do 2 or 3 of them with a little bit more of the Blue Harbor in my dauber, so that they were just a little bit brighter and stood out a little bit more. We're going to be doing a banding around this entire piece and some lettering down the side, which will be optional. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. So I've got my base coats on. My Calla Lilies are white. My Calla Lily buds are avocado dip. The leaves are avocado, and the stems are Hauser light green. Now I went in and lightly put in my detail lines where I want to do the shading and stuff. If I feel like they're too dark, I just want them where I can see them, because this is white. I don't want them too dark, because I won't be covering them up because it's such a light piece. So I'm just erasing them back where I can see them, where I can barely see them. You may not be able to see them at all on there. I put this up on an easel to make it a little bit easier for you, and I will probably zoom in so that you can see a little bit closer. Hopefully I won't get you off of camera. Sometimes when I zoom in, I have a tendency to be off camera, so I apologize ahead of time if I do that. I did go in with my chalk pencil and draw some places on the leaves where I want to make them curled. All those lines will be on your pattern, so you don't have to worry about doing that. Okay, we're going to start with the Calla Lilies. Now, I like to have water drops on my palette, and I just use a travel misting bottle. You would put hairspray or something in. And I just mist the side of my palette paper. So you can see all the different size of drops that I have there. And I like to use these curved flats for floating. They are like a flat on one edge, and then they're just curved on the other edge. And I like to pick up the water drops on the curved edge and then pick up my paint over here. Let me wake this brush up, get it damp. You need to wake your brushes up before you use them. Otherwise they won't work well for you. So I've got water in my brush now. I'm going to show you how I load for floating. You can load however is most comfortable for you. If you've got a specific technique that you use, then you just go with it. If you like angled brushes and not so much the curved flat, use that. If you like to float with flat brushes, use that. I want you to use whatever is comfortable for you. This is how I load when I'm loading for floating. So I need a little bit more water, so I picked it up here on this curved edge. I'm dipping into my paint just on the toe, and I'm working it into the brush in a V. Okay, I want to get the paint up the bristles and just over a little bit. So I'm laying my brush flat and working it in. I can tell I have a little bit too much water, so I'm just going to lay my brush on my paper towel. Continue to pick up until I feel like I've got enough. Now my brush feels dry. It's just that. Figuring out how it feels, how your brush feels. It's important to learn how your brush feels when you are loading it and painting with it, because it will tell you if it needs water or paint or both. Okay, so I've got a soft gradation right here, and how it looks right here is how it will look when I go paint on my surface. So we're going to start on these Calla Lilies. I'm going to see if I can spin this and still keep you in frame here. I'm going to zoom you in just a little bit. Okay, make sure I've still got you on frame. I'm going to work on this one down here. Normally you would start at the top and work your way down, but this one is the one I can get in the camera lens the easiest. So I want to shade underneath my line that I drew. I'm just going to walk that down a little bit. I always use a mop brush when I float. Just gently. I tap in the water edge, and if I need to blend my paint a little bit more, I will just barely tap in that paint, because I don't want to remove what I put on there. And if you tap into it or just keep pouncing on it, you're just going to take the paint away. You use your mop brush dry. To clean it, you just go to a wet place on your paper towel and you rub off the paint, and then you go to a dry place and you just dry it. That's all you got to do to clean it. Alright, let me load a little bit more. I try to stay in that same place that I started loading unless it feels like it's getting dry, and I don't want to pick up dry paint. So if it feels dry, we'll move to a new spot. Okay, let's see. This one comes across here, so we're going to have a little like V right there. So I just brought the paint down to where it touches there. Now I'm doing like a back-to-back float here because I want to get some of this color into the center of this flower. This is lavender that I'm using here. Okay, I'm going to come here. Now we'll be coming back with some white and adding some white onto that, because our fold, as the flower folds, it comes around. So we will have some bright white that will go along the top edge of that right there. So let's float a little bit along the bottom here. That up just a little bit. Probably bring that up a little bit farther. I want it a lot farther up that flower than that. Okay, I want to get some more in the center of this flower. So I am just going to Put some in there. I've got water on that one edge, so I'm using that water to soften just a little bit. Now I've got a really hard line right there. So I just dipped my brush into the water and touched my paper towel with it. Now I am just softly brushing over that hard line. I want to remove that hard line. And now I'll just mop it. Alright, I'm going to put some of this color down the back here. I don't want to lose all my white. Now, I want this to be more streaky. Let's see, before I do that, I think this edge right here, I want to put just a little bit more of this lavender. I think I might need just a touch right there as well. Okay, we'll come back with white when we're done doing all the purple. Now, I've got a couple of brushes here. I'm not done with that center yet, but I want to add a little bit of detail. Because this is such a bigger piece. Now, if you're painting it on a smaller piece, just the floating is all you may want to do. But this is a bigger piece, so I want to add some detail. Now, I've got a couple of rake brushes here. This one is a curved or a filbert rake, and this one's a flat rake. Whatever brand of brush that you have, you can use. The filbert one is a Simply Simmons, and the flat one is a Plaid one stroke. It was one that they had for their paper when they had the papier paint out. I'm not even sure that they sell this particular brush, but I know that you can buy a flat rake brush in just about any brand. So if that's the one that you prefer, then you should use, whatever rake brush you have in whatever brand that you like. I mostly like low Cornell brushes, but when I find a brush that I like, I'm gonna stick with it. So I've got the filbert one here. I'm gonna try it. I painted these flowers once before, but I really don't remember if I used the flat one or the filbert. So I'm pulling some paint out with some water, and I'm thinning it down a little bit. And now I'm going to spread the brush out like this. I'm pushing down on it to get those bristles splayed out. Okay. Get the water off my ferrule there. I don't want that running down. So I've just got it on the tip. Now I want to take and just flick it on a paper towel to get any excess off of it. And now I am just lightly scratching this down, this flower. Okay. And I'm going to do some pulling up as well. You don't want to get it too thick. I'm going to put a little bit, not too much, in the center here. Not too much in there. Okay, that's all we do with that. I'm going to finish this one particular flower out for you. It is just like the one that's at the top. It's the same shape. And then I'm going to show you how I do the other two out here. Okay. I want to do the stamen in there. And so I want to start with some antique gold. And you're just going to want a little small round brush. I've got golden straw and cad yellow. want just a little bit of burnt umber, or let's see. I think I will use avocado. I know on my original one, which I do no longer have, I used burnt umber. I think I'm going to try avocado. I'll put both burnt umber and avocado on my palette because I'm not sure which one I used that looked the best. We're going to use that for a little bit of shading in there. Okay, we want a round brush. Like a number 2 or 4. Well, this one's actually a number 1. This is a Winsor Newton. I love the Winsor Newton round brushes. There is just no other brand of round brush that I like more than Winsor Newton. Alright. We're going to dip into the antique gold. Okay, I don't have a line drawn there, so I'm just going to start right here. I'm just tapping that in all the way down to that line right there. Or I did that back to back. I'm going to do it again. It's going to get a little bit bigger as you go down. Okay, I'm just going to wipe the paint off. I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm going to go into Golden Straw. I'm going to put that on. Okay, I'm not going to come all the way down, keeping that more to the middle and the top. And then I'm going to do Cad Yellow, and this one I will keep mostly at the very top. Okay. I'm going to get a number 4 Winsor Newton round, and I want to make that white the curve that goes around this flower. Okay, wake my brush up here. I'm going to load it completely with white. Make sure I have all the excess water out of my brush. Okay, so I'm just going to start up in here. I'm just kind of dragging it along there. Okay. Now I'm going to get fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter. So I'm laying the brush flat. Okay, just giving it that little curve on that petal there. Okay, we can also do this along this edge. You'll have to do this a couple of times. Now if you want it to blend more, just start pulling it out and blending it in with that center. Okay, till it's blended like you like it. Okay. We'll go along this back edge as well. I have a lot of paint in my brush. Okay, I want to blend that in just a little bit, so I'm just dragging it. It's just a very easy, gentle, barely touching kind of drag. Okay. Darken this here. Okay, now we're going to shade. Behind, on this side of this with our lavender. shade on this side of it. Let's see, we also need a shade right here. Make sure that's dry. This one comes over that one. Okay, I think my white was quite dry enough there. Alright, I'm going to take a little bit of avocado on my brush. I just dirty brushed right into that avocado. I did not clean the lavender off. I want to put this on the bottom down here. I may come back with some black green, darken that up because that's not quite as dark as I want it to be. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit of burnt umber on my brush. Still just a dirty brush. I've just got a tiny bit of paint on there. Not a lot. I just want to deepen this right here, where that stamen is. Just kind of really set it down in there. You could probably also mix a little black green in with it. I'll mix a little avocado. See if I can make that set down in there a little bit farther. I don't want to cover up my whole stamen. I just want to create that little depth in there. So I'm going to come back with my cad yellow and add those bright little dots back on top of that. Okay. Alright, we want to get some more white on here. I need more white here. I want some more right through here. You'd also take that rake brush and rake some white through there. If you feel like you've put too much of the lavender in. Alright, let me zoom out just a little bit. It's not keeping you on the camera too well right there. Okay, let's add a little bit of lavender. Had a little bit of white mixed in it. Don't really like that green on there, so I'm going to cover it up. I'm going to come back with a black green when I do the stems. And okay, I'm just going to streak some of this into that white. That might be just a little bit more than I want, so I'm going to take most of that off with my water edge and try that again. I'm just using what paint is left in my brush and just kind of rubbing that in. Okay, I think I'm going to let that flower set for a while. I want to go work on the other ones and see what that needs. Okay, this one up here is going to be fairly easy. So we're going to take our lavender, we're going to shade next to that, next to this one here. It lays on top of it. Walking that up a little bit. Gonna mop. I'm gently mopping, especially in that paint area, because I don't want to remove my paint. I have to come back with the white there, touch that edge up. That's okay. Now, you can go down to a smaller brush if you like. I'm going to get my pattern over here. I erase my lines too far back. Okay, so this curves out. Okay, that way, and that one this way. See how that looks like it's curving around? Alright, I'm picking up some water on the water edge of my brush, my water drops that I sprayed on there. Now if your water drops dry out, just spray some more on there. Okay, let's go up here, a little shade, bring it down, walk it over, mop, mop, mop. Okay, let me get my rake brush. Got water. Pulling out some paint. Let me get the excess off of my ferrule. Spreading my bristles out. I want to put some up. Let's see if I can zoom you in so you can see that detail a little bit better. See how that left those streaky lines on there. Just shape following. To deepen just a little bit. Down here. I want to try and keep that looking rounded there. More here. Back with the white. Do some touching up here. Just going to keep my curved flat here. I want to touch this up. I want to keep you on camera. Floating some white along here. Whew. Not that far. Wipe most of the paint out of my brush. You gotta yell at me when I'm off camera. Just kidding. Okay. I'm just taking what's left in my brush and working it in. Need to fix that. That's really bothering me. So let me get my round brush. I'm going to use my number 1 since that's a smaller area. I'm going to do some white here. float that. Blend that out a little bit. Alright, I'm going to go to a smaller curved flat. The one I was using was a 10. This one is a 6. Go back into my lavender here. Happy with that curve right there. I think it needs a little bit of just a little, almost like I want to line it. So I'm going to be up on the very tip. I'll take the water edge. That back. Not sure that did for me what I wanted it to do. Almost. Coming around here, curving here, going here, coming back. Touch my finger to that to remove the paint because the paint was going on very thin and it was not covering, so I needed to remove it. So I just touched my finger to it to remove it. Okay, let's go over to this other flower here. This one here. Flowers are pretty easy. There's not a whole lot to them because they're a soft lilac with white Calla Lily, and so I don't need a lot of dark colors in them. They just need to stay the color that they are. You know, with that purple, almost like a purple accent on them. So I'm just walking that up. Basically this whole thing in here is going to have purple in it. I want to very, very gently mop that so I don't remove the paint. Okay, then we need to shade under here. And along here. Very much paint on my brush at all. Okay, I want to give a little bit more paint. Make sure that's dry because I want to put some of this down here at the base. If you've lost a little bit of your shape when you put this on, don't worry, because you can put that back in with your white when you add your white later. Okay, I'm going to just darken this in here a little bit more. Oops, off camera. Didn't hear anybody yelling. Okay, now this one comes over this one, so let's define that right there. That will help our eye. Definitely need more water. Just like a pencil, just drew that line right on there. Now it's up to you if you want any purple accents, lavender accents up here anywhere. You don't have to do that. Water. I've got hardly any paint at all on my brush. Mostly water. It's just kind of a glaze that I just put on there. Okay. Now the one that we just did right here did not have a stamen in it, but this one will have. So let's add that. Go back to our number 1 round. We're going to start with antique gold and figure about how tall that you need it, or use the pattern. And it's going to get a little bit fatter as you go down. We're going to go all the way down to here. We'll reshade that. I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm not going to wash it. Dip into golden straw. You don't want to cover up all of your antique gold. Add that on there. Wipe it off. Go to your cad yellow. And this will stay mostly at the top. So you can see those colors. I'm going to let that dry. While it's drying, I'm going to get my 4 round and work on this fold here. Flattening my brush out. Cover up that, or try and cover up that graphite line that I put in there. Okay, we want to define this little tip here. We can make a little curly loop on it. Okay. I'm going to take my 10 curved flat. I think I want to define that inside area just a little bit here. Okay, that looks much better. Shade that a little bit more. A little bit on that white edge so it looks underneath this so it looks like a deeper shadow right here. I might do that on this one as well. I just want that. This is a tight little float. I want that white to really look like it is raised up. I just want that to look a little deeper in there. Does set back. Okay, that's just purple. Now I'm going to add a little tiny bit of burnt umber. Make sure that's dry so I don't remove what I just put on there. Take that burnt umber off and just go with purple, the lavender. You just want this this to be a little bit darker right there, to look like it's deep in that flower. Just put just a wash of a shading just along that edge there, because your brightest is going to be right next to that center. Just touching up on this one. Zoom you out a little bit. Get a little perspective on those. A little bit more white here on this edge. Now I did not use the rake on this one because there's just not an area big enough to do that. I'm just using white here, just brightening a little bit of edges. Checking it to see. See what needs a little bit more. These are really soft colors for these Calla Lilies. I'm going to go finish this one because it is just like this one. And we're going to come back and work on these buds. Alright, let's get started on our little pods here. I've done this one here to show you what they're going to look like when they are completed. So we're going to work on one of these. I'm going to zoom you in. And we're just going to have a couple of colors that we're going to use to complete these, kind of like we did on the flowers. There's not a whole lot to them. So let's get started. I'm going to use black green. I've got black green, cad yellow, and the avocado dip, and white on my palette. So let's get you in here. And we'll work on this one right here. So I'm using a larger curved flat, so you can go to a larger angle if you are working with an angle brush. This is a size 12 curved flat. I'm going to load it with black green. I'm having it go over quite a ways on my brush tip there because I'm going to be floating down here and I want it to be a fairly wide float. Try and stay off of the white of that flower, but if we get on it, we can just go wipe it off real quick. So I'm just going to walk this up. That's pretty messy looking there, but we will. Now I'm going into the paint that I put in there because my paint was pretty wet and a little messy, so I just barely tapped it to kind of smooth it out. We'll come back and clean that white edge up when we're done here. I want to dry that so I can go on to the next step here. Might go ahead and work on this one while that one's drying. This little fan here I got at Walmart. It's less than $2. Has batteries already in it. Perfect little fan to take with you to class. That one's a little noisier than most. Most of them are pretty quiet, so you don't disturb the person painting beside you, and you don't blow everything off the table. Alright, I just want to deepen this down in here. Working it up a little bit. Mop, mop, mop. Gentle, 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 because I don't want to remove all my paint. Okay, clean the mop brush. Take a dip brush. Get a little bit of that green off of there, just so it's not so hard to cover up with the white later. Okay, that's pretty dry. Now, we're going to create like the pod opening where the bud would start bursting out. So we're going to draw a line up the center of it. And we're going to take one round, and we're going to take some avocado dip and a little white. We're just going to mix them together, and we're just going to go down that line. Okay, that's like the little opening that's peeking out there. Okay, now we are going to shade on each side of that with black green. Need more water. See, it's kind of draggy looking. It means my brush was dry. So we're just going to go down each side of that line that we just painted on there. Mop it. See if I can keep you on camera if I flip you around here. Oops, this way. We'll float the other side. All the way to the top. Try and get them to meet there in the center at the top a little bit. I'm going to repeat that just to darken that a little bit. Gentle pressure when you're floating. Try and lay your brush flat unless you're in a really tight area where you need to raise it up on the tip. But if you can keep your brush flat and give gentle pressure as you move the brush along, then you will get a really nice float. Okay. Now, a couple things to finish this off. We're going to float a little bit of cad yellow along the top. Just the tip of it there. You can come back and repeat that if you feel it needs it. Then we're going to take a round brush, I've got a number 4 round here, and I just loaded it with cad yellow and made the brush where it's flat. Okay, now I'm just going to flick it on my paper towel to get any excess off, and I'm just going to dry brush this down these 2 centers of this pod. Brighten that up a little bit. Okay, now we want to take a 10O liner, and we're going to get a little bit of that black green on our brush. You want to have a little bit of water in your brush when you're doing this because you want the paint to be a little bit thinner. And we're just going to create like a second. It's just very gently touching that, creating a second little opening where the flower will burst out of there. We're going to take it all the way up. Okay, I'm just rubbing it back with my finger to lighten it there just a little bit because I don't want it to be bold and dark. And I think I'm going to shade along the bottom of this one more time. Some black green. That up just a little bit. Okay, let me zoom you out so you can have a look at how that looks. So we've got a couple of pods there. Now this pod here, the line down the center looks pretty bright. So what you can do if you don't like it that bright is glaze over the entire pod with some avocado dip. Well, you might keep it out of this very bottom area, but in the center here, you can glaze over that with some avocado dip, and it will just kind of tone it back down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to get these other two pods completed, and then we're going to start working on the leaves. Alright, we got all the pods done. Looking pretty good. Now we're going to move on. I'm going to show you how to do a leaf or two. The reason I'm not doing every single thing and completing it for you is because I want to make sure there's enough room on the DVD to get all the detail at the end done. So I'm going to zoom you back in here. And we're going to work on this leaf right here. So we're going to start with some black green. I'm still using the 12 curved flat here. Okay, I've drawn a line here where I want to have part of this leaf turned. So now let me rotate my table here and get you back in focus because I need to pull this towards me. So I'm going to float some black green right along. I'm laying my brush flat, soft pressure. Okay, I'm going to mop that gently, gently. Don't want to remove the paint, just want to soften it. Okay, I'm going to go to a smaller curved flat for this outer edge. I'm going to my 10. We're going to float along the outer edge of that fold right there. Just to define the shape of it. Okay, we want to shade next to the flower. Let's see. I'm use the bigger curved flat for that one. Keep laying my hand in my water drops. Just all along that. Just walking it up a little bit because that area right there in the center will be fairly dark. Alright, well that one's drying. I'm going to work on one of these. There's two like this, but this one is behind this pot here. So I'm going to work on this one here while that one's drying a little bit. So let's get you in frame here. And shade next to it and along the bottom. I used the 12 on that, but I could have very easily used the 10. Would have been just as fine. We'll come back and deepen that. I want to add some highlights on this other leaf while that one dries. Alright, I'm going to start with Hauser Light Green. I'm using my 10 curved flat. I want some highlighting on this edge right here. My brush is flat when it's through this bigger part here. Gently mop that. I have to come back and reshade down here. I want to put some of this along the tip of the leaf. Just kind of walking it down. And I will soften that outer edge there so it doesn't look scraggly. Okay, let's go back to this one. I can get you on camera. There we go. I don't usually have this much trouble keeping it on camera, but because this piece is a little bit longer, it's given me a little bit of a challenge. Okay, so you see that's dragging right there. Not enough water in my brush. That out just a little bit. Okay, gently mop it. Easy peasy. Okay, I'm going to go and increase this. I'm going to just dirty brush into some avocado dip. I've got that Hauser Light Green on there, and so we're just going to intensify this highlight. Mop, mop. That will do all the softening. Okay, I'm gonna reshade down here on this edge just a little bit. And I want to put a little bit more next to the flower here. I think it needs to be much darker. That flower is on top of that leaf. Oops. That wasn't my mop brush. I'm gonna let that dry before I do underneath that turned edge a little bit. Okay, underneath this, I want it to be just a little bit darker. Okay. I think I need to brighten the very top of this one a little bit. And now I've got to highlight on this one again. So I'm going back into the avocado dip. Our first highlight was the Hauser light green. Just a little bit right here on the highest part of that turned leaf. I'll come down here on this one. Dry. Now I want to create a center vein. I'm not going to get too technical with these leaves, I don't think. I'll put the center vein in here and then go back and back the camera out and see how it looks. But I want all the detail the focus to stay on the flowers. So this one, I'm just going to put a vein in it like that. And this one. Needs to be a little bit bigger vein. That is not near big enough for that big leaf. Water in my paint. When you're using a liner brush, your paint really needs to be consistency of ink, so it just flows off of your brush nicely. So let's back out here. I need to reshade at the base of both of those leaves, I can tell. I think I am going to add a little bit of lamp black in with my black green. I just needed that little bit darker than that black green has given me. So just the tiniest bit of black in with that black green. Got black all over me. Goodness. This one. That makes that look much better. Okay, I want to take some black green, a very light wash of black green, and put on the flowers. I'm going to start light and then build it as I think that it needs more color. But I want the stems to look like they're actually coming out coming from these. So you're going to have a little bit of green on these from that. Dark, so I'm going to add just a little bit of Hauser light green in with that black green. If I can't get like a nice medium tone there. That's better. I like that much better. So I just brush mixed that. I just picked up a little bit of Hauser light green. Mix that on my brush. Much better. I think I might put just a little bit along this edge, just a tiny bit. Give the illusion that that one is, the end of it's pretty close right there. So that's how we're going to do all the leaves. Let's work on some of the stems. We based them in with Hauser Light Green, so now we want to do a little bit of shading on them. I'm going to get my 6 curved flat. And I don't want to zoom you in too close because I've got a lot of areas that we'll be working on. So I'm going to bring you in a little bit. We're going to shade with some black green. Okay, these will be pretty basic. We're going to shade next to each one of the flowers, and we can come back and intensify that. You don't want anything to look like it's just floating in air there. Smaller brushes, you have to go back for paint more frequently. The stems on Calla Lilies are very substantial. They are a thick, heavy stem. Okay, we want to shade next to any. Keeping that paint pretty tight on the toe there. Now, this one you can decide if it's on top or if it's behind. I think I'm going to try and put it on top. So that one, so that would make this stem go back behind. See how we gave that illusion there. There's 2 stems right here, side by side, so they're a little bit harder to see. So there's one here, and one here. Okay, I'm going to shade along next to this one. I'm going to put a little bit around this. Try and keep it off your white, but you can always go back and touch up your white. When I feel like my paint is getting too far over my brush, I will go dip it in my water and then just wipe it off on my paper towel. And that will remove any excess paint that I feel like I've got in there. Okay, down here it starts getting a little bit more. You know, where you have to make decisions. I'm thinking about coming in and putting some ribbon down in here. So some of this we won't even end up seeing, but in case you don't want to do ribbon, you can just leave it as is. Okay, this is few on top of each other here, so this one goes excuse me. Okay, I think we've got them all defined, so we just want to go in and excuse me, repeat the shading. Now, a lot of times we think, one shading is enough, but really two times to shade is better, because the first one may not be dark enough, but the main reason that I like to do it is because the second one just really makes your piece look more polished and finished. Now you can choose to go down the outside edges of the stems to make them look more rounded. I really hope I'm keeping you on camera. Apologize if I am not. Okay, I've got one down here I didn't define, which is on top. So this one. Okay, on the bottom of these, if you want them to look like, they're more cut. Let's see. Get this where I can get it at a good angle for you. Let's zoom in a little bit. Give this stem a little cut edge there. Okay, we want to add some highlights on here. Now I'm going to see if I want to shade the outer edges of these or not. So I'm going to take a round brush. I'm going to use a 1. You can use a 1 or a 2. I'm going to use avocado dip, because these are painted. How's are light green, so we'll see how it looks. I may want to add a little white to it. I'm just going to streak this down the stems, just in the areas that you can see. Okay, I really want these stems to look more rounded. So I'm going to do the tightest float possible on each edge. It's almost like an outline. Let me think about that. Yeah, that's not looking too bad. I haven't completed the leaf underneath that, so it's kind of hard for me to visualize that. It might just end up blending in with the leaf. That shading that I just put on there. I want them to look a little more rounded. I'm going to add a little more highlight in the center, I think. Add a little bit of white to that avocado dip. Get some more water on my palette here. Let's put some more highlight in there. Avocado dip, I'm going to mix a little white with it. So I dip into the avocado dip, then I dip into white, and then I just mix it. Try and put a little bit on these edges down here. Still haven't decided if I'm going to put some ribbon on there yet or not. So let's zoom that out. Okay, those stems look pretty good. Alright, I'm going to go finish my other leaves and then we're going to get ready to add some detail around this. Okay, I've got everything painted in here. It's looking pretty good. I'm still undecided about if I want to put a ribbon down here or not. So I'm just going to move on to my next thing that I know I want to do. And I want to put a border around this. So I've got my compass. I've measured out about half an inch, it looks like. So I'm just going to hold it back here at the back and mark all the way around. Then I'm going to tape it off. You're just following the shape. Kind of hard to see my pencil line there, but okay. So I just followed the shape there. Now I want to create a little bit. Let's see, which side do I want to come in onto? I think I'm going to make it a little smaller. This time it is about 1/4 of an inch. Oops, pushed it in. my lead down a little bit. Okay, get that measured back out here, 1/4 of an inch. Okay, that's 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to hold it back here. My pencil lead just went back down. Had that happen before, so I have to get a different compass. Okay, let's try that again. Oops. Hitting my table here, and my pencil has gone back down underneath there. I've never had that happen before, where it just keeps sliding back down underneath there. Goes again. Goodness gracious. Oh, okay. Gonna have to find my old compass. Okay, I've got this all taped off. I have to tell you, this was the most difficult thing I've ever taped off, ever. I don't know if it's because I couldn't see my lines, you know, after having the difficulties I had with my compass. I don't know. But I've got it taped now. I use this green stretchy tape. So as you're going around the curves, you're going to pull it and smooth it out as you go. Okay? Now I'm going to use a fingertip dauber. I'm going to dampen it. And I want to do the outer edge with a mix of desert turquoise and blue harbor. These are also the colors that will be in our dragonfly that we're going to paint on here in a little bit. Now, if you have a dragonfly stencil, that would be really pretty in the background as well. So I'm just going to pick up, I've got both colors on my dauber. I'm just going to blend them together on the palette. You can still see both colors. And then I'm just going to go along here and tap this all along here. Pick up, I want to make sure when I go to pick up, I'm picking up on the same side that I had it all on before. Okay, so we're just going to do this all the way around it, and then we are going to remove our tape. And we're going to paint a dragonfly on here and some lettering, and we'll have this all ready to go. So I'm going to finish tapping this all along here. Make sure you get your edges. And if you feel like it needs a second coat, go ahead and put a second coat on it. We're going to take the tape off and see how it looks. Okay, I've removed the tape, and on these areas here, where it curved in, I'm not quite liking how I taped it, so I'm just taking some graphite, going along that edge, narrowing that up a little bit. Just kind of straightening my lines out just with some graphite. Any place where it bled underneath the tape where I didn't get it pushed down good, because graphite was our base color, so we can just cover it with some graphite. Any edges that look a little rough. Let me zoom you in so you can maybe see what I'm doing. So I've got my edge here it's a little ragged. So I'm just floating some graphite along there to clean it up a little bit. Like this edge here is just, I don't know, I really had my tape on crooked with this one. Keep that shape nice. This one got a little I can get you close enough to the camera, but I really did not get my tape straight here. Oh, so I'm just straightening that up, cleaning up my little edges there. I think this is a little bit too wide here. Okay, that's looking a little better. So I'm going to finish cleaning up some edges here and get some dragonflies transferred on. And erase any graphite lines. Alright, I've got my edges touched up. I'm working on maybe changing this flower a little bit. I haven't decided yet. But right now we're going to go and paint a couple of dragonflies. I've got one that I've just drawn the wings in down here at the bottom. And then up here at the top I've got the wings of another one. Now you could put butterflies on here. You could use that same stencil and create a colorful butterfly. But I wanted dragonflies on here. So we're going to use Desert Turquoise and Blue Harbor for our wings. So I am going to start with the Desert Turquoise, and I'm just using my number 6 curved flat. And we're going to go along the top of these wings. We'll have to do this a couple of times. These are going to be kind of transparent, but not super transparent. You could just do with the the one coat on here if you wanted. A little bit more water. Dry there. I just drew these on with a dressmaker's pencil, so when I paint over these lines they won't be set in, they'll just fade away. It's what I like about dressmaker's pencils because they disappear with paint or water, so you don't have to worry about getting them set in there. Now I'm going to load on that same brush. I washed it out. Blue Harbor. And this will go on the bottom of each wing. I will do this twice because I want the wings to be a little bit brighter. You'll see a little bit of the background through the wings. That's what you want. Okay, so I'm going to do a second coat of that desert turquoise. Now you can really see that color start to pop on there. Probably just stay on this one and finish this one out. And you'll do the other one the same way. Excuse me. Okay, the Blue Harbor again. Okay, now the top wings will lay on top of the bottom wings. So when I come and put this Blue Harbor on, I want to go over that paint that I just put on there of that desert turquoise. To set that wing underneath. We'll shade under it and set it under there a little bit more. Okay. I'm going to zoom you in just a little bit closer to that. Okay, now we're going to create the body. I'm going to use a #1 round and burnt umber. And you can use the pattern. It's just a series of like circles. So I have a circle that I make for the head. And then I just create like circles for the rest of the body, all the way down, getting smaller circles as I go until I come out to the tail. Okay. I need that body to dry, and then I'm going to repeat it. So while it is drying, I'm going to get a little lamp black, and we're going to float underneath those wings. You'll have a very small amount of paint on your brush. It'll be thin with water. You want to come underneath this wing. I'll have to make that just a tad bit darker, so I'm going to pick up a tiny bit more paint under this wing. Touch that back with my finger. It's a little darker than I want it. Okay, we'll go next to the body here. second coat on the body. Okay, I want to erase my graphite lines on these wings here. I don't want them distracting. Okay. We are going to take a little bit of turquoise. Well, I want to create the lines on the wings first. So let's get a 10-0 liner and thin our black paint down to inky consistency. And we want to rinse our brush out, dry it off, and then load it so your brush is not full of paint. And then you're going to touch your paper towel, your brush to a paper towel to get like any thick paint that's off of the end of it. We're going to create some wings. Now, it's almost like making stained glass. You just want to create different lines, but they all want to touch somewhere. You don't want your lines just being out there in nowhere land. We'll do this to all 4 wings. I usually start with one down the center, and then I just build from there. I think when I touched this one, I took off too much paint, so I'll go back and fix that a little bit. I don't want it really bright, so I want to take off as much paint off of my brush as I can and still be able to like write with the tip of it. And you're staying up on the very fine tip, keeping everything super duper fine. Okay, now we will highlight with that number 6 curve flat. We're going to take some desert turquoise and a little bit of white and just brush mix that. I just dipped into each one so it's equal amounts. We're going to highlight along the top edges of these wings. Not too close to the body there. And down here on these outer edges. I think I'm going to have to create a little wash of desert turquoise. Skim back over. I feel like I'm losing that color on here, so I want to make sure I keep that. Okay, let's go into the black. We're going to create some shading on the body. Now, if you're doing a much smaller piece, you don't have to get too detailed. Create these separations. Keep you on camera here. This is a very tight float. Okay. Now we're going to highlight with some, let's try some antique gold. I may want to do golden straw, but I don't want it too bright. Okay, so I'm going to highlight on the top edges. A little more water. Okay, now we want to create some antennae. So we're going to take a little bit of burnt umber on the 10-0 liner and add some golden straw to it, equal amounts. I just brush mix it. And create like little teardrops there for the antenna. I'm going to shade underneath the wings one more time. I think they need a little bit more. And that was with lamp black. Next to the body here. Still think they just need that little brighter highlight on the top of those wings. I'm going to float just a little bit more of the Blue Harbor along this bottom edge. I just wanted those wings to stand out a little bit more. So we can add a final little highlight of the mostly white and a tiny little bit of desert turquoise on the top edge of these wings if you would like. You could also outline these wings with black. Okay, now we want to add some ice crystal to the wings. Give them some sparkle. We'll take 2 coats on here to make them really pop. I think 2 coats is just the right amount. Now you could use the, this is Glamour Dust Ice Crystals Deco Art. You could also use the, just the Glamour Dust glitter if you wanted. That will give it more dimension. I didn't really want the dimension, I just wanted the shine on the wings, like the sun was reflecting on them and making them glisten. So we'll have to put a couple of coats of that on there. Okay, I'm going to finish up the other dragonfly, and we're going to get ready to do some lettering down the edge over here. Alright, I've got my 2 dragonflies done. So now we're going to do some lettering down the side. And I am going to put Calla Lily down the side, but you could do welcome. You could put Calla Lily, you know, Calla at the top and Lily at the bottom. And move your flowers over more towards the center. But I wanted mine off center. So I've drawn a line. It's about 1.5 inches from the outer edge. And that's where I'm going to place my lettering. So I put tack it over and over on the back of this, and it's dry. This is just a calligraphy type stencil. I bought it at Hobby Lobby. Decorative formal script is what this one is. This is a formal script. Alright, so I'm going to put that line down the center of the letter. Okay, now I have mixed some desert turquoise and a tiny bit of graphite, which is our background color. I've probably got 4 desert turquoise to 1 graphite. I'm using my fingertip dauber. You can get these at any place that sells scrapbooking supplies. I'm going to lock in my turntable here. Hopefully it won't bounce too much. Alright, we're going to start with the C up here. Let's see how I like this color. I might want to go more with the blue instead of the... No, I like that color. That looks good. Okay, so I've got the C. Go. I'm going to dry that a little bit so that I don't smear it. I'm going to go down and put each letter on here, and then I'm going to erase that line down the middle. So I want the A to sit right underneath. I'm going to have it go through the middle of that line go through the middle of that letter. I'm going to see where my placement is. Don't want it too close to that C, but I don't want it too far away either. This is where you could take your ruler and mark exactly where you want each letter. I'm an eyeball kind of person, unless it's something that's lined specifically with lines and checks that need to be pretty exact. I don't tend to do too much measuring. I love these letters. Alright, try that one. I'm going to do one more for you, and then I'm going to go finish the letters and erase that line, come back, and then we're going to do a drop shadow beside these. Alright, L down the middle. Take it up just a little bit. Having to tack it over and over on a stencil with this detailed of lettering is pretty important, I think, because otherwise you would get a lot of bleed under. Okay, I'm going to finish up the letters with this color, and then we're going to come back and do some drop shadowing on there. Okay, I changed the color of the letters a little bit. I added 2 parts of white to that mix that I had of the desert turquoise, which was 4 desert turquoise and 1 graphite. Then I added 2 snow white to it because it was just too dark, wasn't standing out enough for me. So now I'm going in with my liner brush, and I'm just connecting all the breaks that were in the letters, like this Y. This is the last one I have to do. I have not connected where the lines break apart from the stencil. So right here and right here. So I'm just going to close those places up with my liner brush. Actually, this is a number 1 round. I'm just going over the letter a little bit. You don't have to do this. You can leave the breaks in there. I just wanted to make sure that the letters looked as smooth as possible. So now we're going to work on some drop shadow. We're going to put this on the left side of these letters. We're going to use lamp black and our one round. Excuse me. We're going to thin the paint. So I've got my black paint here. I've dipped into my water. There's water on my brush. I'm going to pull out some of that paint. I don't want it super thin, but I want to thin it a little bit where it flows really nice off of my brush. So now I'm going to wash my brush out because I don't want all that paint and all that water in there. I'm going to reload it. I like to roll my brush when I get it. Sorry, I had some water on my ferrule there. I like to roll my brush when I load it. I like to roll it and pull it out. Some people say that's not good for your brushes, but I like to do it because it gives me a really nice, good point on my brush. Okay, so I'm going to start here with this L. We're going to do on the left side of all these letters. Now, when you are doing lettering, and you don't have to do the drop shadow if you don't want, or you could also take the stencil and put it on there and just slightly move it to the left and then use your black and create your drop shadow that way. You want to go in a downward motion. You want to try to never take it across, because if you take it up or across, you have less control of your brush. So you want to always try to make your movements go down. And if you have to turn your piece in order to get that movement, then that's what you should do. So when you get to bigger areas, you're giving more pressure on the brush. Alright, that's all we're going to do to create the drop shadows. It's as easy as that. Where you start here, you'll be on the very tip creating a thin line. Then as you come down, you're going to give more pressure on the brush and get fatter. And so when you create this line here, you want to start where that one ended and go to there. Same with this one. You want to start up here, get a little fatter, and then come up on the tip and end just about where those two will line up. And that will keep it looking very professional looking. So I'm going to go get all of my drop shadowing done on that. We're going to do a little shading around the outside. We're going to take a look at it and see if I want to add that ribbon. I still haven't decided. I think right now I'm not going to, but I want to get it all done. So let's get the drop shadowing done on all of the letters. I'm going to do one more here for you before I go finish. I just want to make sure there's enough room on this DVD to get it all done. I gave more pressure there as I came down and around. I go pick up paint quite frequently. Okay, I'm up on the tip here, and because this is a fatter area, I'm going to get white, give more pressure, because the shadow on that part will be bigger. Come up to my tip here. Kind of ran out of paint right there at the end. Okay, now I'm going to create this one here. Got a little bit right there. Okay. Alright, I've got all my lettering done, the drop shadows done on it. I was thinking about doing a shadow around the inside of the banding, but as I sat back and looked at it, I think I'm going to leave it just like it is. I want it to be a border that's like on top of it. I don't want it to, if I put the shadow on it, that's going to like raise it, and I don't want to do that. I want to keep the eye drawn right to the flowers. This one flower I was trying to lighten right in there, And it's not working out so well for me, so I'm going to put a little bit of the shading back in there that I had with the lavender. And then I think we're going to call this piece pretty done. I think it's ready to be signed and delivered. Thanks for painting with me.